Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I'm a security researcher at Varonis. And why am I wearing cat ears today? Well, today is a celebration stream because today is just after the 5-year anniversary of me joining Varonis and beginning this stream. So this actually started out as an effort to create a YouTube channel that was a little closer to the null byte style. But then with the start of the pandemic, we primarily switched over to live streaming. And after some personnel shifts where we lost my former co-host, Michael Raymond, to his new virtual CISO role, where he's out advising medium and small businesses all over Montana about their security posture, we switched mostly to live streaming and doing events. So we've been doing that for quite some time now. But 5 years is when I actually started this whole journey and began coming up with the first episodes and putting them out. So I wanted to take this stream to kind of reflect on that a little bit, go through some of the highlights of the Security Forward channel, and also thank all of you for getting us here. We are just shy of 60,000 subscribers, and having that many people to speak to is incredible. And already I heard from some of the people at Varonis this week that some of their sales prospects and stuff are actually fans of the show, which I imagine was kind of their intention. Oh, you can barely see the ears. I have to go all the way over here. There we go. But yes, I've put up some of my favorite badges, some of which have been badges that I went to while representing the show. And overall, it has been an amazing experience to be able to meet all of you, create this forum for talking to each other. I know a lot of you are also active on our Discord server. So I just wanted to thank all of you for being a part of growing this channel. And when I started at Varonis, I wasn't exactly sure where things were going to take me. I had a lot of opportunities back then. I mean, I was on the Hack 5 show. I was still making null byte episodes. There really was a lot of stuff I could do. And after my experience at a startup that, let's say, rhymes with Boober, I wasn't necessarily eager to jump back into working at a corporation. So initially when Varonis reached out, I kind of kept my distance, and I was looking them up and looking at Glassdoor. And then I went and I spoke to some of their employees. And I think Haley Norman was one of the first people I talked to. And I was like, hey, do you feel like you could just email the CEO if you had to? And she'd be like, well, that would be weird, but I don't feel like I'd get in trouble for it. They just have to be like, why are you talking to Yaki? What's the big deal? So I didn't get the feeling that there was as much craziness as there was at a lot of the big corporations or even big tech startups that I had worked at before. So with that good impression, and then with the understanding that I would be able to create content the way I wanted to, I'd be able to continue to educate people and make useful, interesting, and fun things for the cybersecurity community, I eventually decided to join. And it's been a journey involving a lot of my closest friends, a lot of other content creators that you've probably seen. And we've had a lot of really awesome people on the show. We've had a lot of interesting iterations and permutations. So I wanted to show kind of what we won from this process. After all of this time and all of this energy, we've really made a number of episodes and a number of pieces of content that I think are really great for the community, that were really fun, that explored new areas. And I wanted to shout some of them out. So one of them, let me turn on my screen here, is the very first episode we ever did, and one of our best performing episodes. This was hacking computers from blocks away with a Wi-Fi duck. So I'm going to mute this for myself and also speed it all the way through. But this episode basically used the exact same set as Nullbyte. I came up with kind of a new sign off, and then we had this we made a new intro just for the Security Forward channel. Oh, and it even included the Varonis logo. So we wanted to see if you could use a couple of microcontrollers to do the same thing that a more expensive product, a USB rubber ducky, does. What's the actual range on this? Everybody knows what the USB rubber ducky is at this point, or at least most people do. It's a little USB device that looks like a thumb drive, but when you plug it in, it instead behaves like a keyboard and sends out a lot of keystrokes. And that can be used to do all sorts of things. Anything that it can do, you could do sitting behind a computer typing. So there's really a lot there. There's really a lot that you could do, but you have to pre-compile some of these scripts. There are some disadvantages here. And a friend of mine at the time, Spacetoon, decided he wanted to make a tool that stuck two microcontrollers together and got the same effect, but with Wi-Fi remote control. So this manifested as the Wi-Fi duck. So this was a ESP8266, this SparkFun Pro Micro. And what's cool about this is the ESP8266 here has Wi-Fi capability. The Pro Micro has the ability to show up as a native USB device and also do keystroke attacks. So Spacehoon basically just slapped these two suckers together with this printed circuit board and had them work together. Now, what's cool is when you plug this in, both of them are powered off of the same USB power supply. So that means you can link these two devices together and create a third device that has not a ThinkPad. Sorry, that was misleading. But you can slap these two microcontrollers together and create something that's like a USB rubber ducky, but with Wi-Fi control. So this has actually kind of been superseded because nowadays you can actually do this on a single microcontroller. And for example, this USB nugget uses the ESP32S2, which was one of the first microcontrollers that was very cheap and easily available to combine both of these superpowers and make it so you can use a single board to achieve this effect. But this was the first time that I had really seen a cheap and easy to acquire design that blended both of these abilities. And I thought this was cool enough to do a range test. So we went ahead, we slapped this together, and then we were kind of using a directional antenna here. You can see the Simple Wi-Fi antenna. Simple Wi-Fi is incredible in that they gave us this crazy Yagi antenna, which is encased in that like clear tube. And that gave us high directionality to reach out and touch this device a lot further than we expected. So we decided to set up a demo at the Americana. We had our friend here sitting at a coffee shop, and we had one person who snuck in and plugged something into their device. We had our second hacker here across the street. Somebody plugged that in and sat down. Our hacker, Michael, from across the street was able to send a payload, and there we go. It ran the payload, executed, and then I used a little piece of fishing wire to unplug it before our victim came back. Kind of like people always ask us, like, how would a bad USB attack look in real life? Well, we staged one as close as possible where we're basically plugging it in. And the advantage here is that the hacker doesn't have to know what kind of operating system they're going up against. They can text their accomplice and say, hey, it's a MacBook Pro. And then that person can pull up a MacBook Pro backdoor script. The attacker can plug it in. Their accomplice sends over the script really quickly. And then boom, we have a successful bad USB attack from a couple of blocks away at the least. So I thought this was really cool because you could have two people working together and only one of them is kind of exposing themselves to the risk. And the use of fishing wire to kind of pull it out at the end, I thought was kind of clever. So that was one of my favorite videos we've done. I thought it was very, very cool. Why do I think Varonis is suspicious? I don't know. What are you suspicious of? When I was first looking at Varonis as a company to work for, one of the first things I did was like look up, like who they are, what they do. And I was very happy to see that, they don't have a mission that I think is like sketchy or nefarious or like, capturing all the information from everyone in order to like spy on them. There's a lot of cybersecurity vendors that I actually really dislike. I won't name them because I'll get in trouble, but there's some of them that, for example, like buy stolen data from hackers online and then turn around and sell it to law enforcement so that they can do searches of information without a warrant. I don't necessarily think that that's a good practice. I probably wouldn't work for that company, but Varonis protects data. They do all sorts of great things for companies like that are just common sense things, like detecting insider threats, being able to stop ransomware attacks, and making sure that their environment isn't primed for an attacker. And making it super easy to fix all that. So once I got into the thick of it and I saw what Varonis did, I was like, okay, you guys are genuinely improving things. Everything you're doing sounds good. And when I like simplify it and explain it to beginners, they're like, clearly we need that. Is that not built into everything? I'm like, no, it's not. You have to buy the service for it. So anyway, learning about what they do was definitely an educational experience because there's a lot of different products they offer. But the fundamental core mission at Varonis, I think, to protect data is something that I'm generally behind and doesn't make me feel like there's anything morally sketchy going on there. So yeah, I really like working at Varonis. It's been 5 years and it just seems to have gone by so quickly. But anyway, yeah, I'm very cautious around any company, that I might work for. I really want to get to know them. I want to know whether or not they have a good culture. And I feel like the culture of Varonis has been really excellent and I've been really happy working here. So, all right. So another video that I pushed really hard for. Oh, and also, how am I doing? I'm pretty good, Tai Peng Gong. I'm finally getting some good sleep. I'm enjoying the weather in Los Angeles. I'm here for about a week on some unrelated stuff, but it's been nice to get some good weather as in Montana it's been storming and many of my trees have been killed. So this video was something that we wanted to do for a while. It was hackers react to Mr. Robot. And the idea was like, okay, I know all this stuff about hacking and I should watch some of these videos. And I did this with my friend Nick. And we should watch like Mr. Robot and we should talk about like how realistic this is based on our experience. Now we've been to a bunch of like hacker conferences, and Nick, for example, also has a lot of experience with like engineering and hacking and stuff like that. So when we did this episode, we thought it would be fun. And ultimately, this ended up being really popular. 74,000 views. We did this 3 years ago. And I thought that it was a good way to kind of highlight some inaccuracies or some ways that like this would work in the real world, especially around like Wi-Fi stuff. And it ended up being very popular. It also ended up being a huge headache and got me in so much trouble. So I'll explain why. So this episode immediately got picked up by the content filter and made it so that we had to do a copyright claim, which was aggressively and automatically contested by some sort of service that most of these studios employ. So because there's a service out there for just hammering anybody that uses their clips in a YouTube video, it means that creating this made us unable to stream for over a week. So we tried this out and it totally messed up our live stream. We couldn't do any of the streams we wanted to do because we immediately got multiple content strikes, and eventually they got resolved. But every time we think about doing this again, we remember how difficult it was to do this because of the aggressive content striking that is done as a service for these sorts of clips. So we got away with some other videos that didn't have as aggressive content striking, and some of them we ended up just deleting and we weren't actually able to show any of you, which is too bad. But posting content on YouTube, copyright is obviously like a big deal, and we don't usually run into that because we make all original content. But the one time we try to be fun and like cover some Mr. Robot stuff was also the one time that we got in pretty serious trouble with our streaming platform and then had to chill things out a little bit before we were able to stream again. So that's why you might not see us doing as many of these. It's mostly because it is very difficult for us to do anything that involves copyrighted work in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, so that's our number 2 most popular video of all time. I would love, honestly, to do that more often. I think that it's really, really fun to be able to do the whole like rating a video or something. But in the end, I just found that we got kicked off the air for quite some time. One of our fruit trees was devastated this year by the crazy weather. Yeah, over in Montana, where I live most of the time, there was some incredibly strong storms. Not only did we lose a bunch of trees to the winter, which got down to negative 134. Oh, no, sorry, not 134, negative 34. Wow. Check again next year for the 134. But then also this year, there's also been such crazy strong storms that it killed all my corn, all the sunflowers, and killed several aspen trees. So yeah, the weather has been pretty extreme all over the place. Obviously not good for passion projects like a garden. Love the USB Nugget. Going to order another soon. Yeah, we debuted a number of new things at DEF CON. One of them was supposed to be this badge. I'm almost glad that we're doing it separately from DEF CON because this badge looks, if you saw the DEF CON badge this year, this looked kind of similar to it, but it's LoRa enabled. It's got LoRa. It's got these 2 batteries, which are actually rechargeable lithium batteries. I think this is slightly crazy, but they each have their own USB Type-C port to plug into, like each individual battery. So, power supply, interesting. It's got a buzzer, a bunch of buttons. It's kind of laid out like the Game Boy Advance. And it's got this really, really nice screen, which is very, very similar to the screen that the DEF CON badge was using this year. So this is the the unprogrammed version, but obviously it's got lots of lights and other cool and delightful things built into it. And we've made a lot of things after the USB Nugget that have either enhanced it, added to it, or added some delight. The prototype also for this one was actually this giant square. So you can see how when we start a project, it looks crazy. And then eventually, as the project runs through the process, it ends up looking something like this. And then usually there's a case or something else that kind of adds to the way that it looks. So really fun prototyping project. A little bit late for DEF CON, obviously, but we're still going to be doing something with these in the near future. So stay tuned to see these again. But yeah, USB Nugget has been the tried and true device that I've taught hundreds of people, certainly hundreds of people, about bad USB attacks. we've taught about CircuitPython, and then more recently, I've also taught about using LoRa radios on a very basic level. So I've been teaching my LoRa for Hackers class, where we just use CircuitPython to control the radio and send packets back and forth, send sensor values, trip something on the other end. And it's been really cool. It's been really, really awesome to be able to take one platform and add so much to it. I think that we also came out with the breadboard breakouts last year and brought them to DEF CON this year that allow you to plug it into a breadboard and add custom sensors and stuff. So yeah, if you do end up grabbing one, let me know if you do anything cool with it, because we've been basing a lot of our classes that we've been walking around to each of the conferences we've made it to this year. We've been teaching a lot of them based off of the USB Nugget. All right, so some other videos that I wanted to shout out in the history of Security Forward are going to include, okay, so we had a second one, yes, but also the beginning of our cutout series. So Michael Raymond, I believe, was the first one, my former co-host, was the first one to have the idea to start cutting these out and using them as individual content when we cover a topic that's really evergreen. So, there's Alex in this one. So we discussed each time, like, a little bit about like SIM swapping in this case, or the other news that we were covering, and gave some advice on how to defend against it. So a lot of these videos were built to kind of like take the existing content that we had and break it out into a more digestible kind of view. This one got 18,000 views. It was made 2 years ago. And yeah, I think that once we started doing this series, it started with Michael, and then Alex jumped on, and we had some other co-hosts along the way. It was really interesting to be able to break out these topics as individual pieces that people could find on our YouTube channel, because maybe they're not willing to sit through an entire hour-long live stream. They instead just want to get like maybe the best part of that conversation. So big shout out also to my silent partner, Bill, who's lurking behind the scenes, for also contributing significantly to these coming out again in the last several months. So yeah, we only started taking highlights from the live stream out about 2 or so years ago. So if you like these, please let us know, comment on them, like them, etc. Because yeah, I really think that preparing for a couple like topics I really want to talk about with everyone each week, it's easy to do. And I usually have a couple things that I really want to discuss, or some things that I really think are worth thinking more about, especially on the news segment, but also during the Q&A too. So obviously this time we're just reflecting on 5 years of work on Security Forward. But I mean, like, there's always stuff that comes up that ends up being cut out that I think is great. And this was one of the very first pieces that we did. So we also listen to everyone. And a lot of the time, especially during the Q&A segment, like, we'll do a whole breakout on a question that we get all the time from you. So if you have a great question that you think isn't getting answered, of course, pipe up in the stream. We will probably do a cutout as well if there's lots of people asking about it, and make sure that it gets published out in this way. Question. I'm thinking about taking one of the hacking certs out there, but it takes away from the I think it takes away from the progressive mindset of hacking. What are your thoughts? So hacking certifications, let me be clear that I don't have any of them, but I do have friends who do, and have found them valuable as a way to kind of prove what experience you have built in, or at least like what kinds of knowledge you've built into your education, what kind of specialties you have. Like, proving general cybersecurity competence in the absence of significant like job history is definitely one way of getting an employer's attention. And I think that depending on the jobs you're going after, it may be more or less important. I think that in general, like, certs are a good thing to do if you have the skills and time and the money to do it. If you do, then it proves to people that you're dedicated enough to demonstrate this to no real benefit, but your own. And because it's something that's very proactive, because it's something that you're showing off that like you have this knowledge and you're willing to prove it, a lot of employers will factor that in pretty heavily if it's a core part of your job and you maybe don't have as much experience as some of the other candidates. So that would be my 2 cents on that. When it comes to whether or not it takes away from the progressive mindset of hacking, I think that some people really could benefit from the ability to prove that they could stick to something, and prove their skills, and be relied on to do a certain set of tasks with the appropriate background knowledge to make the right decisions. That's really fundamentally what they're trying to prove. So again, I don't have any certs because I'm not necessarily in a job that requires certs, but there are plenty of people who would benefit from that. And to that I say, if you have the resources and the skills to do it, if you think it's going to help with the kind of job that you're applying for, and that's kind of important too, then go for it. But if not, then I wouldn't feel like you're being too left out. A good substitute for that is either community projects that you've done. Like, some of my friends have worked on some Roblox related projects that are actually quite technically impressive And those were huge factors in them getting hired, being able to show off like impressive technical projects they'd worked on themselves that were related to the field. I would say if you have any of these, or if you have like job experience, then the certs are a little bit less important, unless you need to prove that your knowledge is still like up to date and relevant. Oh, there you go. If you can get your own CVE, that would look great on a resume, as long as you found it rather than creating it. Yeah, that's also a good approach, or valid approaches. Although I wouldn't recommend creating a CVE. That would not necessarily get you the kind of notoriety that you want, but sometimes those people do get hired. But yes, being able to identify a critical vulnerability and being able to turn it in and then have your name on it, like that's certainly something that I think most people would find impressive on a resume. If I was looking to hire someone and they were the first to discover something, even if it was something relatively minor, that's still cool. Like that still gets my attention and lets me know that they're a practitioner. Thanks on the 5 years. Yeah, thank you. It has gone by so quickly. When I look at myself in some of these first videos that we produced on the Security Forward channel, it's wild to me that much time has passed. And it was only 4 years ago that I was up on the top of the mountain that the Hollywood sign is on, trying to do a range test and show off, I think, our first or second episode on Security Forward. Let's see. All right. Okay, so an idea here. I'm going to modify an ESP8266 dev board. I'm going to make it more smaller so it can shove 3 to 4 of them in one place and add a battery, screen, and buttons. Hope it will work. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. And I also, I mean, while we're talking about that, there's some new stuff that's come out. Let me see if I can find it. So the company that makes the D1 Mini, or one of the ones that does Lolin, has recently come out with some new designs. Here we go. That I think are pretty cool. And I'm definitely going to be using them. I basically bought out 50% of the entire supply of these microcontrollers right now. So if you're looking for one, there might be some left, but if only because I have not gotten to them yet. So we have the S2 Mini, the S3 Mini, which is a pretty standard design by Lolin. And we use these to power nuggets. They're very cool. They're very interesting. However, there's been a development. Now they have these other ones, and these other ones are more of like a straight up D1 Mini form factor. It's omitting many of the inside pins that were previously useful. And to that, I'm not totally sure how I feel, but it comes with a built-in screen. This is crazy. So to me anyway, this is crazy, because looking at something like this that has the ability to like overall like run everything that I might run on like a bad USB device with a little screen and buttons to scroll and select, like that's really, really cool. I don't know. Actually, looking at it, it looks like the reset button or the programming button might be on the back, which would be great, because losing one of these buttons to being the programming button would kind of not be great. But at least for 3 buttons, you can make a reasonable little microcontroller standalone thing with this new device. So I expect hackers to use this as kind of like a prototyping standard, just because I think if you're looking for a little board that does Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and all the other stuff you need to make a prototype, this has 3 buttons, like scroll and select. It has a little quick connector, which unfortunately is wired all messed up. So this quick connector is not compatible with all the other quick connectors that are out there that service components from like Adafruit or SparkFront, or those sorts of connectors are wired backwards from this. So that means that you're going to get all of your stuff very, very hot, because it inverts power and ground. And I think the data lines are messed up too. So it is really weird that on this S3 Mini Pro, they have chosen to use this custom standard where you have to buy their sensors. That's actually really lame of them, in my opinion. But yeah, so the I2C, this is not particularly useful due to them like miswiring it so that it is proprietary. I don't know why they did that, but I don't appreciate it. Other than that, all of these seem pretty useful. You've got VBus ground, all these GPIO. I think that most of these are also going to be like touch sensitive, so you could do that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm relatively impressed by this. And like I said, I'm impressed enough that I could use this to do some of my like cheaper workshops. Like if I run out of nuggets, for example, I could probably still teach like a bad USB workshop maybe on this. Like I'm not really sure, honestly. Like I'm not completely convinced that's true. But either way, I want to give it a try. So if you're looking for interesting microcontroller boards, I just wanted to give this a shout out. But also, yes, if you wanted to make it so you could fit more of these in one place, You could definitely just make it so you're taking the core microcontroller. In this case, if we're looking at the D1 Mini, if you're just taking the core microcontroller here and just dropping it onto something, they have modules that are usually soldered onto the D1 Mini that are able to be just like detached, like soldered all into one place. You just need to supply power, ground, and then if you want them all communicating, you could connect them too. Yeah, so these are a constant source of inspiration. Like I think these boards are really cool. So if you are interested in prototyping, definitely check out some of the new ones. But yeah, that idea is practical, it sounds like. So good luck on that. I think that you'll find some of the little mini ESP modules that allow you to just kind of plug in without a USB will save you a ton of space, and you can plug a lot of those into a single breadboard and power them off of the same USB power supply. Okay, cool. So, and also, yes, if you're wondering how to make these communicate, that's what James is asking in the chat, which is a really great question that I'll highlight. So I did a game one year where I talked to the researcher Space Tune, and I was like, hey, could you, like, if you're able to write arbitrary packets, could you just record information and play it back over the radio? And he's like, yeah. So I made a game where I was using a single D1 Mini to play a Wi-Fi handshake, and people would try to crack that Wi-Fi handshake as part of the game. But if I wanted to change it or reset the game, there was no way of doing that. So I was like, all right, what if I just make it so one of these actually joins the other's network? So one of them creates an access point, the second one joins it. I obviously have to have them communicate the Wi-Fi network name and password that they're using. So in the end, I decided to upgrade my game by having a pair of these microcontrollers, and they were connected by like two lines, RX to TX and TX to RX. And they did a connection over there that allowed them to sync the username, sorry, the Wi-Fi network name and password for the network that the first one was creating. So we used, I think it was like a virtual serial or something like that to communicate this, and it was relatively simple to connect the two boards together. So yeah, like if you want to have a pair of these boards working on something, you would just need to connect power, ground, and then like you could use two arbitrary pins or RX and TX. Either way, if you want to make a whole bunch of these boards work together, it's not that difficult. There are some built-in, some libraries that have been developed for that make it pretty easy to do so. And I've used it for some of my own projects, which were really cool. All right, so some other episodes that we have created on Security Forward. This one has about 5,000 views, but this one was talking about a post on talking about rickrolling an entire high school, covering the news. Obviously, we started doing that after the news stream, and the news stream started again because of COVID, and we were living in a place that was so difficult to upload stuff that we found we were going to get fired. So during the live streams that we were doing, we had just enough bandwidth to pull them off, but at the beginning, we had to actually like pre-record them, upload them in advance, and then stream them live and kind of debut them. So we called them Simu-Live. And we used to do this because we lived in a place with just absolutely terrible reception. But we started getting pretty good at it, and the news streams were probably the easiest to record because they weren't Q&A streams. So we started the news streams out of necessity, just because we lived in such a remote area that we had to pre-record our streams the day before and upload them, because sometimes it would take a full night of uninterrupted internet service, which never happened. And sometimes we would actually have to drive into the nearest town, which is 20 minutes away, and upload it by waiting outside the library, which was often closed. So yeah, the news stream started out of necessity, and it ended up becoming something that we do all the time now. But this was one of the first cutouts from the live stream, and covering some of these stories, I think really got people to, I don't know, be interested in some of the stories of the week and understand how they applied to them. So this was another one that we did, talking about surveillance and talking about how, like, you never know where some of these devices might be listening. In this case, we were talking about how doorbells, like Amazon doorbells, made it so that you could potentially listen in on conversations happening on the street, people on the phone, your neighbors. The range on these microphones is actually incredibly good. And because of the way that these recordings are stored, in some cases, virtually anybody that works at Amazon is able to access these recordings with very little oversight. So you have a combination of potentially invasive, like tech, like being put on the front of your door. You have these recordings that are being stored and can be accessed by virtually anybody at a company where there's tons and tons of employees. that's pretty concerning, obviously. So police could potentially use this to spy on people by requesting the information through the app. And there are ways of being able to share your camera with police if they suspect a crime has been committed in the area. That's been deeply integrated into these services. So obviously a lot of concerns. If one of your neighbors gives the police the ability to access their camera and it's positioned in a way where when you step outside on the phone, they can just hear everything, like that just means the police can hear everything you're saying when you're outside on your phone. And that might not be something that people feel like opting into, or they might not even know that they're opting into it. So I'm really happy that we started breaking out these news segments. I think that the news stream, while it might have been created out of necessity, still ended up being one of my favorite parts to do. And we're still doing it years later. So yeah, I also have to thank everybody that's been a part of the news stream. Sometimes our super fan Zam would send me a bunch of news stories, and they would be the majority of what I would talk about that week. So we pay close attention to the comments. We've had a lot of people contribute over the years. And Zam, I have to shout you out if you're out there or if you see this recording as being someone who heavily influenced our news stream. And we actually met in person a number of times and had a really great time. So this stream has allowed me to meet a lot of really cool and talented people. I want to thank all of you for being a part of that. And the news stream has been, again, like one of my favorite things that we've done, and a bigger development than I thought it would be, but ultimately a great gateway to talk about the things that are affecting us as a society or as individual users. Let's see. All right, congrats on the 5 years. Any recommendations on places to acquire cheap tech toys to play with? Live strong. Oh man, I hate to do this to you, but AliExpress is my go-to place to buy stuff. Now, another thing I really like about AliExpress is that it is unhinged. I believe that it's collecting data on you, like that's fine. However, I also think that it is one of the last services that just appears to have no idea like what my spending habits are. It'll show me microcontrollers, sure, but it'll also show me like hair extensions and like weird, inappropriate things. Like it's totally crazy with the kinds of things that it tries to sell me. So because of that, I don't think I'm actually going to go to my AliExpress page. Also because you might actually see how much I spend on it, which is a lot. But I find there's a lot of really interesting things on AliExpress that touch cybersecurity. So it could be enough D1 minis to work on like a hacking project where you're just like maybe burning through them really quickly, or you need a whole bunch of them. And being able to buy them at like $2 a piece or something like that might be really important to a project you're working on. If you don't already have a bad AliExpress habit, that I'm sorry to be the one that recommends it. But I don't really buy things off Amazon that are electronics unless it's an emergency. I generally buy, I would say 80% of my electronics off AliExpress, and then the remainder of them I get off Amazon if I like absolutely have to, because it's all the same stuff mostly. And I just have had a lot of luck on AliExpress for the most part. I know it's kind of a roll of the dice, and some of my friends have recommended instead, doing like Alibaba or something like that. But frankly, like AliExpress has been good for me, and I found most of the prototyping stuff that I work with, but both the raw components for creating prototypes, if I need to solder them on later and I can't find them via the manufacturer's website, or also just getting maybe knockoffs, maybe not, of various hacking tools I see out there that I'm interested in. The HackRF is one example. There's like a million HackRF like derivatives or knockoff or other things on AliExpress. And while I don't necessarily recommend buying knockoffs of people's projects, I do think that if you're casually going to try something out and you see one that you want to try and it's like $12, then like anticipate that it's going to be half full of hot glue maybe, and there are some things that I would say absolutely never do on AliExpress. Like never buy an SD card on AliExpress. I would never do that. Never. No, I just wouldn't do it. Probably wouldn't buy a USB stick off AliExpress too, because again, it's gonna be like 50 to 60% hot glue and then just like soldered to like a slow speed SD card that was rejected from some other factory. So there's definitely some like funny stuff going on with AliExpress. So it's not necessarily for complete beginners if you're gonna be buying commodity goods, but if you're buying like electronics specifically, like microcontrollers, like I've even seen some of the like Fox something, Lucky Fox, I think is the brand, microcontroller boards that run Linux that have been getting some attention for like crazy cheap. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, then I would say AliExpress is my go-to for discovering new and interesting microcontrollers and hacking stuff. But yeah, I find them to be very cool. All right. So there's one thing that I wanted to address, even though it was not a question, which was sneakernet vibes. So I've been doing a lot of research in Southern California on Meshtastic, setting up Meshtastic nodes, doing sensor stuff, really kind of feeling out stuff and getting comfortable with teaching other people about how it works. There is a lot of stuff out here, and I have a little node that I'm running currently. I just wanted to show off kind of what it looks like and what currently is going on. So I have all of these nodes that I've discovered. This is, oh wait, I'm not even showing my screen. Sorry, our silent partner Bill has departed, and I forgot that I now have to show my screen by default. There we go. All right, so these are all of the nodes that I've discovered in the Southern California area. And many of these are new Nugget nodes, but sorry, like 5 of them are like our new Nugget nodes. The rest of them are all other people's nodes that are broadcasting and doing cool stuff. So I have one of them that is doing sensor logging. I have SenseSnug, which is my current one. And this is broadcasting environmental metrics. You can see the temperature in here is 72 degrees. And then I have another sensor, which is very close by. And then this one, for whatever reason, doesn't want to show me a graph, but that's okay. And I can see it's 81 degrees outside. So 71 in here, 81 degrees outside. It's good to know. I've got another sensor. Let's see if I can see. This one's not showing environmental logs. But anyway, a lot of these are actually showing their location. Most of them aren't. So there's a giant sneaker net in Los Angeles. And by Los Angeles, I also mean like Southern California in general. And to give you a kind of idea of the scope of this, I wanted to show a map of the SoCal sneaker net that makes up the SoCal Mesh Network. So let's say that I wanted to send a message and I am all the way up in Simi Valley. So odds are that if I'm in this area, I can reach one of the nodes that's around here. And here we can see there's 1, 2, 3 nodes up in the San Fernando / Simi Valley area. And in general, if I wanted to send a message up to here, I can usually do that. And this will be through a series of other nodes. So it's going to commit hops. So let's say that I'm in Chatsworth and I send a message over here to this node. It's going to forward it over to one of these nodes, which is on a hill, or all the way over to this node, which is on a mountain. It's going to propagate out to this area and hit one of the repeaters that's in downtown Los Angeles, of which there are several. So I'm actually not even seeing all of them, but there's lots of repeaters in this area. And then there's also a number of repeaters up along the mountains here that will bounce signals with line of sight that are incredibly strong. So over in Pasadena, if we hit either of these 2 mountains, it's going to radiate our signal all the way around here. And we could, through this network of repeaters, let me zoom out a little bit. Here's one in Gardena. It was very easy for us to talk to Signal Hill in Long Beach, which will then propagate out to this area. And then eventually this network goes, not that far. This network goes all the way down to Irvine, California. So I'm very impressed by this. In a test yesterday, we were able to continue on all the way down to, all the way down to San Diego. So there actually are nodes that go all the way down past Carlsbad, and we were getting pings off of networks that were along the border, basically. Now, whether or not that communication is consistent or somebody was like providing a temporary bridge, maybe there was just like, it was the right time and like things just happened to go through, I don't know. But based on a relatively short mapping of this geographic area, there's a significant number of nodes around here that are providing services to anybody who is running a mesh network. So the channel utilization seems relatively good. So if you're looking for a cool sneaker net and you live in a populated area, you may see the same thing where people have started to pop these up. I've seen around Salt Lake City, San Francisco, Seattle, a lot of these nodes start to appear. So especially anywhere that has like a tech scene, you're going to see a lot of people, a lot of like amateurs and hobbyists like running these. I just got one of my friends into Meshtastic a couple days ago, and he's already like beginning to like do like network, like engineering and architecture to like figure out his ideal system. So if you're interested in sneaker nets, if you're interested in encrypted mesh networking, the argument used to be you would have to like set things up yourself and just assume there are no other nodes out there. But now that's no longer true. I'm connected to the whole mesh network. And I find this to be one of the most satisfying like personal projects to work on that I've done, because I'm probably going to be doing a meetup about this. I would like to maybe bring people over to like Null Space Labs, get everyone together and talk about Meshtastic. So if anybody's interested, let me know. I think that this would be cool to get people together in the SoCal area and talk about it. But yeah, pretty cool. I'm very interested in kind of like seeing what other applications there are if I have the reach to send messages all the way down to San Diego over this Meshtastic network. Okay, so here's a question. Kody, I found Wi-Fi signals all over the city probing for SSID module test. I'm researching on possible denial of service and need firmware for eventual buffer overflow. I need help on finding a device physically. Okay, so it seems like and I might need some elaboration on this, but it seems like the question is, you're walking around and you're getting Wi-Fi signals that are probing for the SSID module test. Now, my first question is this your device? If it is your device, or a device that's like in your backpack or something, then that might solve the mystery just right out of the gate. So that's one thing. But if you are walking around and there's many different Wi-Fi networks, and it's not just your device doing MAC address spoofing, where, like, for example, your own devices will appear as many other devices because they're spoofing their MAC address when they do these probe requests. So not trying to say that this isn't happening, but if I had like a phone or tablet or a laptop that was probing out for this every so often, using a different MAC address, then to me, not knowing that it was randomizing it, it would actually look like many devices around me all reaching out for the same network. Probably not what's going on, but kind of a common thing that does happen. If you did want to learn more information about this, then there's a couple things you can do. First, you can create that network. This is basically the karma attack, where you're creating a network that matches the network name that the device you're interested in is calling out for, and you're seeing whether or not that network does not have a password. The behavior, if the network that's stored in this mystery device doesn't have a password, is you create the fake network, it immediately joins it, and then you can start scanning that device to learn more about it. What's the manufacturer? Does it have any ports open? Like that sort of thing. If it does have a password, then the mystery device will not attempt to connect to your fake open Wi-Fi network. However, we can get more information. So we can do something that's called a half handshake attack. And the half handshake attack means that we're going to create a password protected network with the same name of our mystery device, in this case, module test, but we'll make a random password. And then we'll need to use a laptop or something that has a wireless network adapter capable of going into monitor mode to capture the handshake that your mystery device sends over when it tries to join. So you'll create your fake network. The mystery device will attempt to join. It'll realize that they don't have the same password, and it will stop. But you can now use that half handshake that the mystery device sent over to try to crack the password. So if it's not an incredibly strong password, or if you've just got the time to crack it, then you can crack the password that it's trying to connect to and create a perfect fake. So a module test network that then also has the correct password that this device is trying to connect to. And at that point, you can do the same thing where it connects. You scan this device, you try to find out, like, what is it? Like, does it have any ports open? That sort of thing. And you start to learn more about it. Let's see. Well, okay, there's a question. Let's see. Drone C2 server with LoRa when? Yeah, so we talked about how this would be a pretty good C2 server, and I continue to believe that this is inevitable. So my friend sitting in the other room has already set up to programmatically send and receive packets over LoRa, making it so that he could host a chatbot and that we could basically make it so that it automatically communicates with people that query it. The next step of making that evil, right, is just to make it so that what's communicating with it is infected devices. And then if you have something that you can plug into a computer, it can be that radio then can be used as a sneaker net to transmit messages, commands to it, exfiltrated data back and forth from an attacker. And a drone propagating that is kind of the next step here, because you can fly your drone over like the horizon, send a bunch of messages, like do a bunch of C2 stuff, and then drop the drone back down and make it incredibly difficult to find out who was remotely controlling a device. And if you were to even attempt to just find out what locations are in range of, that particular signal, you would still have a really difficult time, because, if you can pop a drone up over a hill or a mountain or something, establish line of sight, transmit your payload, and then drop back down, it's going to make it super hard to find out where that came from. So yes, I think that a drone C2 server is currently possible. I think that setting it up to run over the public mesh network is currently possible. It's currently possible to programmatically control the node and make it so it sends and transmits in an automated fashion. And it's totally possible to plug in a malicious device to a computer and have it communicate back with that node. I think that that's all the steps necessary to create a drone C2 server. So stay tuned for all sorts of crazy malware running over Meshtastic. I mean, it's just becoming a large enough infrastructure network that I think that nefarious things running over Meshtastic, being encrypted, whatever, are going to be pretty much inevitable, and we'll start to see some sort of response to that in the I don't know if it's in the immediate future, but I just see too much opportunity here for nefarious things that I just can't imagine that that it won't eventually happen. Buy before the ban. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Oh yeah, and also Tatsu, Flipper Zero is the cheaper HackRF. Sort of, kind of. I would say Flipper Zero is really valuable for a number of things, but I still whip out my HackRF if I'm doing any like real radio stuff. I would say the Flipper definitely has some limitations because it can't as easily be connected to like a laptop computer or something to execute some of these like Linux programs that maybe rely on it. So I think that both of them still have their place, but yes, I would say that the Flipper definitely is a worthwhile tool to have, and there's definitely always the concern that it could get banned if people start associating it with enough crime. Do you think the HackRF / the hardware will ever come down in price, or will they get banned first? I don't know, and I would ask, but I think that the creator of the HackRF blocked me on Twitter, like back when I was doing Nullbyte, and I still don't know why. But either way, I can't ask. But I think that the knockoffs that I see on AliExpress, some of which have like some pretty serious things wrong with them, but still do technically work, those have been a gateway for people to try out these tools, or at least a cheaper version of them, with the express understanding that you're not going to get the performance out of one of the real like expensive ones. I think the price probably isn't going to go down. It's going to continue to be one of those things where if you get an unauthorized version, you might be able to afford it, but it also might act really funky and not work. But for the price that you get them for, it might be enough to convince you to buy one of the more expensive ones, because you start doing something you think is really, really cool, but you want to get better reliability, or you're just tired of messing around with the product that's mostly full of hot glue. Um, let's see. Uh, what's your take on the recent controversy over the possible restrictions of 900 megahertz, 915 megahertz of Meshtastic that I hear in the news? So that is definitely something that people are concerned about. Like, obviously, we have a really nice, cool system going, and those only work as long as somebody doesn't ruin it. So, like, all right, on this Meshtastic, let me pull this back up again. On this Meshtastic view, you can see that like potentially I can communicate a vast distance over this area, and I can use that for good. I can use that for bad. I can do it for all sorts of things, but this has a lot of potential, and people are starting to take notice of this, and also starting to find that these sorts of networks have the ability to potentially unwantedly totally junk up this particular frequency and make it so nobody else can use it. Because a lot of people are now using it, and there might be a lot of stuff running on it, the more people are using it, the harder it is to manage. And there is some conversation around either restricting it again, changing the frequency, which obviously would make all these Meshtastic modules not very useful if they are locked to a particular frequency that is now illegal. So I haven't seen how far along this is. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and frankly, it's something I was planning on covering on the next news segment, so I haven't quite gotten around to reading it yet. So expect a further take on this later this week. But obviously, the impact of that would be all of the existing modules becoming not useful anymore without a swap to a different frequency. I'm not sure if there is a proposed swap, or if it's more of just like, this isn't what we expected or wanted, and like we're tired of this loophole and we want to shut it down. But admittedly, this does really feel like a loophole here. Like, it hasn't really been possible to do other radio projects like this until someone decided to do it in an unlicensed spectrum. So now that it's happening, like, there really is the potential for this to be disrupted by changes to those licensed spectrums or other sorts of regulatory actions. So I have my eye on it, and it's definitely something that I'm interested in maybe exploring a little bit more of. So let's see. Oh, okay, that's cool. The SSID module test sounds like someone is trying out example code from Espressif. Module test is mentioned as a GitHub issue. Cannot work in soft AP mode. That's cool, actually. That's just coming on our stream and asking your question. Sometimes someone will be able to answer it. Yeah, I have heard of that module test as part of the like default settings within like Espressif products when you're like trying out the default soft AP mode. So yeah, there you go. That might be it. All right, so we are just about at the end of our stream today. All the questions started pouring in a little bit late. See, what is the best Faraday cage bag works? That's a question for our former producer, David, who loves putting stuff in Faraday bags. I actually was at DEF CON and saw what seemed like a pretty reputable vendor there that was making a ton of sales for Faraday products. So if you look at like, I don't know, I guess like a recap of the DEF CON vendor area, there was a vendor who was doing nothing but selling like Faraday bags, Faraday laptop cases, like everything. And they seemed to, at least nobody was yelling at them that they didn't work, like, and it's pretty easy to test those at DEF CON. So I feel like if you were selling a product that didn't work at DEF CON, you would get caught almost immediately, if it didn't do what you claimed that it did. So I would check out the vendor who's at DEF CON. I'm blocking on their name at the moment, but I know that they were getting a pretty good reception there. All right. Yes, the CAA/FBI is watching our comments. Yes. One of the rules I have on the stream is please don't confess to crimes. It's if it happened to someone that or you heard it through the grapevine, that's fine. But if you're confessing to a crime, please don't give the FBI any more reason to watch our stream than, well, you never know. It contributes to the view, so whatever. Like you do you. Just take, you might have to live with the consequences. Any tips on how to locate the module test device? Yes. So currently we teach a class on our hacker hunting workshop where we actually use the advanced deauthor, which is running on ESP8266. We use that. I think it's a Wi-Fi nugget that we use in the example to do a scan, find devices that we want to like discover, and then basically visualize the signal strength. So you can do a hot and cold walk around and see when the signal strength starts to spike. So it becomes like a signal detector. It gives you like a high like a high rating, like when the signal becomes stronger. And that would be my advice: is if you get a Wi-Fi nugget or any other ESP8266 based device, like a D1 Mini even would work. Flash it with the advanced deauthor, run a scan, identify the device you're interested in, and then use the RSSI mode to track down the received signal strength indicator. That is how we track down suspicious devices when we do trainings on it as a class. And obviously that's a bit more than I can answer, in this amount of time. But I think I might actually have a YouTube, not a YouTube video. No, actually I do. I have a YouTube video on it on Nullbyte that I think you can look up. And that's a pretty good introduction on how to do that. Although an alternative is Wireshark. So we talked about Wireshark and how you can use Wireshark to create a packet filter for only things, for example, that are calling out for that, and using a directional antenna with a wireless network adapter that supports monitor mode. That is going to get you the results you want too. Because I have a YouTube video on Nullbyte where I create a filter that's a graph that, like, the signal strength is being graphed in real time, and it'll spike when you're like moving around with a directional antenna. So that would be my advice, because I think it'll be pretty easy. Provided you have a Linux computer and a wireless network adapter that supports monitor mode and then a directional antenna, those three ingredients, you can track it down. If you have a Wi-Fi nugget or just a micro ESP8266 based microcontroller, then you can also run the advanced deauthor and track it down via a hot and cold method too. That's like Kismet, right? Yeah, it's like Kismet, but I would say it's like Kismet, but unlike Kismet, it's more intimidating looking, and you can make filters in real time that allow you to focus in on a device and manipulate that data in a lot of really interesting ways, including graphing the signal strength, which I found to be pretty easy. I really love Kismet too, though. So that also might work, but I haven't used Kismet in a minute. So I would need to refresh myself on that for signal hunting. What kind of laptop do you use? So currently, this is a MacBook Pro. I will always take a MacBook Pro if someone will give it to me. But if not, then I will buy a $500 ThinkPad that is lightly used off of eBay every time. I have a number of them here. In fact, stand by. This is my current ThinkPad. that I am pretty happy with. Obviously, you can't learn much about it other than it's very, well, it's upside down and it's very Fed coded. But this is the current ThinkPad that I've been rocking. It is out of, there we go, it was out of focus. I like it a lot, honestly. It's got touchscreen. It's got everything except my favorite thing about these old business laptops, the built-in LTE. And it is completely blacked out where the model number usually is. Yeah, so I guess I'll tell you later. Oh, wait, that's a ThinkPad X1 Extreme. So I always find really good deals on ThinkPads like online, and like I generally have a pretty good experience with them. There's some things I don't understand why they do. Like for mine, for example, if I'm in a Windows partition, it'll just like quietly reboot into Linux without asking me. So I'll just turn it off, turn it on. It's running Linux all of a sudden. I'm like, okay, well, that's not what I wanted, but okay. But aside from that, they're pretty versatile computers. They're cheap as hell, and they have lots of great hardware baked into them. So like a Fleet Linux computer, a Fleet ThinkPad that can be your go-to Linux computer and also run Windows when you have to. That's my go-to if nobody will give me like a MacBook Pro. So yeah. Yeah, so that's the other idea. I bounce from laptop to laptop. I have 3 ThinkPads and a gaming laptop. Yeah, like honestly, if that's kind of the ideal configuration. Some relatively cheap ThinkPads that get you through what you need to do, or might be good for single purpose stuff. Like I'm just gonna use this as my default Linux computer. I'm just gonna use this as my Windows computer. But then like getting like a beefy gaming laptop for all the stuff you really want to do, like where you just don't want to be slowed down. That's pretty much the standard configuration. I just replaced the gaming computer with MacBook Pro if someone will buy it for me. T490 laptops have been rocking my world for a while. Yeah, I had a T490S, and the S stands for slim, which means in order to replace a faulty keyboard, I had to like dig out all the guts and like replace everything. And I didn't do it. I handed it off to our guest, Autumn, who's been on the stream a number of times, and she was unable to figure it out. And when she put it back together, it didn't work anymore. So although the slim model is nice, I have to say, if you're looking for a ThinkPad T490, get the full version. Get not the S. It's more repairable, and you won't have anybody taking it apart and losing pieces or critical screws. If you just want to replace the keyboard, it just pops right out. I first watched one of your videos years ago about Armageddon. Old school vibes for sure. Yeah, I know. And what's funny is Autumn, who I just mentioned, is going to college for cybersecurity. And one of the videos she had to watch for a recent lesson on WPA3 is my video on Nullbyte. So I have accidentally been included in so many like college curriculums. I think it's funny. I actually have a lot of like emails from professors and teachers and other things, and they're just like, stop swearing. I'm like, what? They're like, you need to stop swearing because I'm using this to teach cybersecurity to 5th graders. I'm like, it was never meant for that. It was never meant for that. And then other people, like, we'll put in like funny Easter eggs where they'll be like, like we'll name our like test device like toilet cam or something. And we've gotten people who are just like, that is so inappropriate. So inappropriate. I'm like, why? Like, it's a pretty lighthearted joke. It's just like, you really think that my 3rd graders should be, and I'm like, what, why are you showing this to 3rd graders? So anyway, yeah, it's definitely been a while. It's crazy how many times I've ended up in curriculum, but every time like people yell at me for like, including a funny joke or like swearing in a YouTube video that I thought was just going out to a bunch of hackers, I just let them know I'm doing my best. There's only so much I can do. And like, I never intended, or I never expected, I guess, Nullbyte to become a core part of people's like curriculum when they're going to like college. So pretty crazy to me that like some of our more basic videos, some of our fundamental stuff has been used in college curriculum. Hopefully some of the security forward cutouts and stuff also get used to cover some of those fundamentals, because I think that we've done a pretty good job. But yeah, okay, well, good to connect with you. And it's funny, I actually did Armageddon on David Bumbal's channel, and it just didn't work. Like, I had such a bad time, and it turns out I was running a slightly old version, and the creator of Armageddon was so pissed at me afterwards. And they're like, why did you do that? Why didn't you use the newer version? Like, I don't understand. And I got like 4 messages from them on all my various accounts. So I did see it. I don't know why. I was just trying to get through the day. It's what came installed when I updated it. I'm sorry. But yeah, I got in a lot of trouble for that. Or not a lot of trouble. I just got kind of scolded for that one, and had a lot of I had a very sleepless night the night before that David Ball episode where it was just like nothing was working. So anyway, that's all I have for today. I also have all these. I've dressed up the set slightly so it doesn't look like I'm being abducted anymore. I have a number of my favorite badges, or at least the badges I could find from some of my favorite conferences over the years. I've got on this side, I've got where is it? Tour Camp, which is a new one. There it is. We've got Layer 1, two of them, two Layer 1. So I hope you appreciate that datagram. We've got Hackaday SuperCon, and this one was the QueerCon press badge, I think. So hopefully I'll be putting some more up here. I certainly have enough badges. I just haven't had enough time to stick them all up, and I had a limited amount of magnets. But just thought I'd put up some of my favorite all-time conference badges from many of the conferences that I've gone to since I started working at Varonis. I mean, I always went to conferences as press, but this is the first time I've been press, vendor, goon, like all these village this year. I've done more different roles since I started working at Varonis at these various conferences than I was ever able to do before. So yeah, pretty crazy that it's gone by so quickly, and thank all of you for being a part of that journey. So that is all the time we have for today. Thank you again for being part of the 60,000 subscribers that we brought together to talk about ethical hacking, cybersecurity, and also meet up at the events that I've held. And if you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. It lets everyone know that you appreciate the stream, you want it to continue, and it doesn't cost anything to do. So, all right, everyone, I will see you next time on Friday. We will have Killian on the stream again to talk about the hacker news of the week and also some more cloud security. Oh, yeah. So I dropped one of the videos on cloud security. I've been learning about it. And honestly, AWS is so often used. I, as a hacker, wanted to learn more about it. And frankly, because we talk about it on the news stream so much, where misconfigurations and other problems cause issues, we've started doing a segment where we're going to be covering a new cloud security fundamental topic every week and then cutting it out into a series so that if you want to get started with cloud security, you can learn about it. So we've talked about identity and access management policies and how they can get messed up. These are just like simple JSON policies that govern how people can access resources in the cloud. And this is the thing that causes all those news stories about somebody like accidentally setting up their bucket in a way that makes it so anybody can access it. And then somebody comes through and scrapes everything. So we talked about those. We talked about bucket-based or resource-based policies versus IAM policies. So we talked about the kind of other dominant type of security policies that are used in securing AWS environments. And then last time, we also talked about, what did we talk about last time? It'll come to me. But anyway, we've covered a bunch of different policies, and I think that we're going to dive into some more fundamental stuff on Friday. So stay tuned. We'll have Killian on. We'll talk about more cloud security stuff, and it'll be really cool. All right, everyone. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.